Lou Canellis alongside Anthony Herron. Bears have their first-round pick. First time the Bears have drafted a tight end in the first round since Greg Olsen back in 2007 with the 31st overall pick. Colston Loveland from Michigan. Surprised?
Yeah, I'd say so. I thought that if the Bears were going to take a tight end at 10, I figured it would be the one that most of us thought was the number one tight end on the board in this cycle in Tyler Warren. But, you did accurately predict it when we were out at Soldier Field during the pre-draft show. And when you look stylistically, comparing what Tyler Warren would have brought to the table for the Bears, where Cole Kmet is at with his size, with his movement ability, both guys similar in stature, similar in game. Tyler Warren, I think, a better playmaker on the ball than Cole Kmet at this point in his development. But Colston Loveland does give you a different type of movement, more sleek, more sudden. I was describing him on the radio here in Chicago throughout the week, just comparing and contrasting the two tight ends. Both guys are different in style. I don't see, Colston Loveland ever being a guy that's going to weigh 265 pounds, but he played at the University of Michigan. They value the run game. They didn't throw the football at a high level, so he's a willing and capable blocker. But as far as just the route tree, he separates from defenders at a higher level than Tyler Warren does, and he's a guy with the ball in flight who can reach away from his frame, snatch the football. So he's a really impressive route runner and playmaker in space. Just didn't have the volume of targets and playmaking opportunities in his collegiate career that Tyler Warren did at Penn State.
And he didn't have great quarterback play last year at Michigan either. One of the reasons why I thought that they would select Loveland was because I thought he fit the Ben Johnson offense better than Tyler Warren did, especially with the departure of Keenan Allen. Can he be the guy, that pass catcher that they lose in the departure of Allen?
I believe so, especially when you factor in the volume of 12 personnel that the Detroit Lions use. They were one of the most frequent teams to line up in 12 personnel in the National Football League. One running back, two tight ends. So all those multi-tight end sets that the Lions thrived in recent years with Ben Johnson calling the plays. Now you'll see the Chicago Bears able to utilize that a lot. And so, you still have the ability to move Cole Kmet around to a variety of positions on the field. But Colston Loveland, once he does get healthy, you'll have the opportunity now to feature him within the slot quite a bit. And he did that a lot at the University of Michigan. And you match up someone with the stature of Colston Loveland against linebackers, against safeties. He'll have the ability to kind of bully them in the middle of the field. And, we'll see what degree of route runner he is once he gets into the National Football League. Hard to compare him directly with Keenan Allen, but as far as a guy who can run up the rails, operate between the hash marks, and give, as we saw Caleb Williams begin to develop that rapport with Keenan Allen throughout last season and make some tight window throws. It's one of those things. When you look at the career, and I got to evaluate him really closely throughout his entire Michigan career, when you watch the way that Colston Loveland operated in the middle of the field, up the rails, he didn't mind taking a big hit while he was there, engaged with the defenders. He can make catches in traffic and doesn't mind having to be physical while he's doing it.
He really gives, he's a mismatch nightmare out there. You touched on going up against linebackers, the speed he brings to the table. This team still needs a left tackle. All right, we saw Will Campbell go off the board quickly. We saw Kelvin Banks Jr. go off the board. Membu as well. Yeah. Where are they going to get that left tackle if Braxton Jones isn't 100% healthy coming off the ankle surgery and Karam Amagaji just doesn't develop into the left tackle that they hoped he was going to develop into when they drafted him in the third round last year?
I do wonder, because Kelvin Banks Jr. came off the board at pick number 9 to the Saints. I wonder what that decision would have been for the Bears. I would have erred on the side of getting a left tackle because I think Kelvin Banks would have come in and been able to be a quality starter for the Bears as a left tackle if he were still on the board. But then he comes off the board, and the pick was in rather quickly. So, the Bears, who knows if Banks was there, would they have picked him instead? It doesn't seem at all like they minded the fact that Colston Loveland was available to them in that 10th slot. There was a lot of reports throughout the day of the Bears perhaps moving around, trading up, some of those rumors that were there. You wonder how much of that was smoke and mirrors, and just to see if the potential was there for, if your exact prediction was maybe the Bears would even be able to move down a few slots and have the opportunity to draft Colston Loveland. I do wonder if a little bit of that was gamesmanship from Chicago, because in theory, they probably could have been very confident that Loveland would be available to them in that 10th slot. So with Kelvin Banks coming off the board at number 9, now the Bears, as they move forward in this draft, I don't believe it would make a lot of sense for them to look to trade back into round number 1. So we know they've got multiple picks available in round 2, several picks overall on day 2 of the draft between the 2nd and 3rd rounds. So left tackles will still be available there. A guy like Josh Connerly out of Oregon could be someone available. I'm not as confident that you have him inserted directly into the lineup immediately and believe he could be your guy who starts from day 1 as a left tackle. The potential is there. He was the number 1 offensive tackle in his recruiting cycle just a few seasons ago. So there's a high ceiling for Josh Connerly. I don't know for sure that I feel yet, though, just in my evaluation of him in this draft cycle, that he definitively upgrades the Bears. But if Braxton Jones gets healthy, if they feel like Herron Amagaji is a guy who can develop, then he can at least enhance and bolster the competition that can end up taking place for left tackle in the Bears. Another name that's very interesting is Joshua Simmons, Ohio State left tackle. He played the majority of his career at San Diego State, played a lot of that time as a right tackle, played the first month and a half of this regular season in college football this past year for Ohio State as a left tackle. A lot of folks began seeing Joshua Simmons as the top, even beyond Will Campbell, as the top left tackle in this draft cycle, and then he suffered an injury and had to miss the remainder of the season. Still not healthy yet. But if for some reason the injury bug, he's had a couple of injuries, has Josh Simmons, if for some reason he's still there when the Bears are back on the clock at pick number 39, then maybe that's a name the Bears would consider. But you do have health concerns there. Do you want your top 2 picks off the board? You know, this offseason, Colston Loveland coming off a shoulder surgery that ended his season at Michigan. We'll see whether or not, how quickly he's available, but not expected to be available for mini camps, OTAs perhaps. I don't know that Joshua Simmons is a guy because, you know, he's got his own physical ailments that he won't be ready right away either. I don't know that you want in Ben Johnson's first time being able to take the field with his draft picks if you don't want the first couple of guys available. So Joshua Simmons, an interesting name who projects as a guy who would have gone earlier if he were healthy. So left tackle, perhaps not your starter that would be on the board by the next time the Bears pick. But there are other positions the Bears could still use.
Still a chance Darnell Wright could move from the right side to the left side.
That's been part of the conversation. Now, he's performed really well as a right tackle, and we're coming off of watching Ben Johnson calling the Detroit Lions offense and seeing the fact that he's been able to have Penei Sewell play right tackle and be dominant there. Now, that was coupled with other quality, veteran, high-level left tackle play. So they haven't necessarily had to consider Penei Sewell starting consistently at left tackle for them. So my feeling is you've got 3 excellent veteran interior offensive linemen that you went out and spent big money for. Darnell Wright has been able to lock down that right tackle spot. I think you leave him intact, and that's where you've got left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle all solidified. You can figure out left tackle. You go and find that, whether it is with another free agent acquisition, talk of trade that could be there from other teams. And who knows? You know, maybe it's the health of Braxton Jones and you get by for another season with that. But running backs are still on the board. Other, positions like defensive front still on the board as well. So the other spots that the Bears could go, I wouldn't necessarily prefer that they flip Darnell Wright from right tackle to left.
All right, they still have picks number 39 and 41 in the 2nd round, and then pick 72 in the 3rd round. This team still needs a running back, and they need a guy that can get to the quarterback.
I would value the positions of need to have a running back now on day 2, assuming the Bears don't trade back up into the 1st round. And I hope they don't, because it's a roster that's not that deep yet, not deep enough where I think the Bears should give up. Having a couple of picks within a few spots of each other in the 2nd round, you can make some hay there and potentially get multiple starters on day 2. Who knows? All 3 of your day 2 picks could end up being contributors if you go down that road. So I prefer they don't utilize any of that draft capital to consider trading back into night 1 here with the draft, unless there's someone that they are truly in love with. But I don't believe that where the Bears roster is at right now, that you take that approach. I believe you stand pat with your day 2 picks. You got to value a running back there because there's a lot of really talented players, multiple backs from Ohio State who could likely be on the board that could come in and help the Bears right away. It doesn't have to be someone who stylistically pairs, in a different sort of manner, a different running style than what they get from DeAndre Swift. But guys who could be considered in that variety would be Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, Caleb Johnson from Iowa, a couple of guys who do have the ability to show that top flight speed and make big plays, but then you also have more physicality and the ability to convert short yardage. But right now we'll see. Amarian Hampton is a guy out of North Carolina who's expected to go somewhere in the first round, who some people believe in his NFL potential, compares favorably with Ashton Genty. Omarion Hampton, he wouldn't necessarily give you a different look as much as DeAndre Swift, but he'd be a high-level playmaker if for some reason he drops into round 2 and is still there by the time the Bears get on the clock. I think he's likely to be gone by the time the Bears pick. But Travion Henderson of Ohio State could be another guy as well. Now, again, he's not stylistically that different from DeAndre Swift, but if you got one home run hitter in the lineup at one point, you put another home run hitter on the field after that, I don't think we lose a lot of sleep if you got two different backs who can set the world ablaze with their speed and their open field playmaking ability, and Travion Henderson could really be that guy. But there's some pass rushers that I'd be excited about on day 2 as well. This guy named James Pierce out of Tennessee. There's an edge rusher who, if for some reason, like he's got first-round tape as far as the way he rushes the quarterback. There's only one other guy in this draft cycle who I would compare favorably with Abdul Carter out of Penn State as far as just being a speed rusher that turns the corner, that gets that burst and that close out of his stance on offensive tackles. And James Pierce from Tennessee is that guy that I think is very similar to Abdul Carter with the way that he can fly out of his stance and get up the field and just zoom around offensive tackles. So if there's any other player that I think as far as an edge defender, a pass rusher that's similar to Carter in that way, I would say James Pierce is that guy. So if for some reason he's still on the board once you get into the late 30s, that'd be an exciting name to watch for the Bears.
Nice work, Big A. Colston Loveland out of Michigan. First time the Bears have drafted a tight end amongst the first 10 picks since Mike Ditka
Oh, wow.
back in 1961.